Thank you for downloading this podcast from the British Theatre Guide. For more information about British Theatre Guide, please visit britishtheatreguide.info.
Liverpool's Unity Theatre has had a long history as a political theatre company and is the last surviving member of the Unity Theatre movement, formed from workers' drama groups in the 1930s. Originally performing in a wide variety of venues, the company settled in a former synagogue in the centre of Liverpool in 1979, where it is still based. The theatre is to present a series of events under the name A Radical Reimagining to celebrate a century of radical theatre in Liverpool. The project was conceived by Eli Randle, who took over as Artistic Director in 2024, but has had a much longer association with the venue. I spoke to Eli about the project, the theatre and political theatre, the day before the 2026 local council elections across the UK.
I'm Eli Randle, the Artistic Director of the Unity Theatre in Liverpool, which is a small-scale theatre which hosts lots of different productions throughout the year. And I think it's known for maybe kind of the different types of productions. So we're 150 seats, 2 studios, 1 upstairs, 100 seats. So I think we share loads of different types of work, but I guess off the mainstream is normally kind of what we would share.
Yeah. And it's quite a busy area of Liverpool as well for theatre, isn't it, where you're based?
Yeah, it's great. So we're just off Hope Street, and then obviously we've got the Everyman at the Road and lots of cultural organisations. So yeah, it's a really great place to be. Yeah.
You're now looking back over nearly 100 years of not specifically about the Unity, although it's been there for most of that time, but political theatre in Liverpool. So what's that all about? What's the project about?
So yeah, it's called A Radical Reimagining. And when I first started here in this job, although I've been associated with the Unity for 20 odd years through my work, and I'm very passionate about this space and what it offers to artists, I was thinking about projects and also thinking about, because I was arriving at a difficult time, and as it is for lots of arts organisations, like what's the point?
Yes.
A big question. And I started thinking and looking at the history of the Unity. And I'd been having a lot of conversations with Graeme Phillips, who unfortunately passed away last year, who was a great friend and mentor to me. He was the artistic director for 30 years. And all the kind of discoveries of what the Unity was before it became building, and how there's not much of that. You can't see evidence of that here.
Right.
I came across this book all about the Merseyside Left Theatre in the office, and I thought this is just an incredible history that hasn't been explored. So that was the start of it. And then finding out where the archives were, and then, what could this be as a project? And so it's a big, multifaceted project, and Liverpool John Moores University are archiving material that we had to get from various places to come together.
And you went through 200 boxes of archives, I believe.
Well, I didn't personally, but they're still going through it. So the archivist is a year-long position. So this is all supported by Heritage Lottery funding. So I did an application, and we were successful, which was brilliant. So it's enabled us to do quite a lot of different elements to this project. And the archiving is, it's not something I've ever been involved in, but I'm now realising the importance of it, and how, for somebody then can just go through and look, and somebody sorts it all out, and it's incredible amount of material from the 30s. So we're doing lots of different things. I'm making a production, which we start on Monday, rehearsals. Right. There's exhibitions here, there's exhibition at the library, and lots of other events around, workshops and, information that's going to be in our theatre so people can see it. So like a history wall. And also I've been doing a lot of interviews, so oral histories, which is really important as well, because, there's nothing like a person describing something.
Yeah.
And that obviously gets lost as people die. And it's really vast and big, and so much, there's so much information, but it's really incredible, like going to see like handwritten notes from meetings in the 30s and old scripts that you can hardly, so it's a huge body of work that they did.
The problem with something like that is stopping yourself from just studying one thing when you've got another 199 boxes to look at, and so you can just get fascinated and be taken on a journey, can't you?
Yeah, I just wish I could just do this. Unfortunately, I have to run a theatre and do all the other things as well. But Yeah, so like I've kind of come across that exact thing in sort of planning for this production because, it really can only give a flavour,
Yeah.
I've read a huge amount of plays, more than I've ever read in my life in the past months. So they wrote a lot of their own stuff as well as performed, for the first time, sometimes plays like certain plays by Brecht. They were the first ones to do them in Liverpool, so they were bringing lots of stuff to the city. But yeah, like I said, in terms of the production that I'm making, it's kind of like a snapshot throughout the decades. I've chosen extracts and weaved that in with people's voices, or, we're going to have lots of projections of stuff from the archive. So I think it's kind of like a nice sense of the kind of work they did and a little bit of a journey through history, really.
Yeah. So back in, was it the 1930s when the Unity first started? What was the sort of theatrical and political climate at the time? What did it spring from?
So it was the Spanish Civil War, really. So that was the kind of early gathering together and what made them form the Unity. So I guess it came from a political desire to share in some way theatrically what was happening, in Spain and gather support. So early pieces they wrote about Spain and obviously lots of socialist people were, joining and supporting the Spanish people. And out of that, they formed, the initial group.
Yeah.
And I think, it's really obvious, but also interesting that ways of sharing information were so different. So, you actually had to go to trade unions or political rallies or the streets to share the messages or ideas. And so, there was lots. They had a choir as well. So they did a lot of political song. And it's really, it's interesting to sort of learn about history along with this process. Everything kind of relates to, what was happening politically at the time.
Yeah. At the time in the 1930s, this was obviously before the atrocities of in Germany and Russia came to the fore. It was really fascism against socialism, wasn't it? That was the big battle politically, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's interesting actually as you go through and all the different things that were happening, and you think how relevant it all still is,
Yeah. Especially some of the things about anti-Semitism that's coming out now, and you think back to Cable Street, which was about this time, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And then obviously you've got the Second World War and all the sort of there's a lot of anti-war plays that go on throughout. Well, actually even before, of course, with like the early Brecht stuff. But it's interesting because I think they brought a lot of really interesting work to the city, and it was kind of it's an amateur group, really.
Yeah.
And then going right in through to the 70s, and then moved into this building we're in now in the early 80s.
So how soon were they performing Brecht plays then? Because Brecht's own company didn't come across until the year he died in 1956, did it? So where were they getting this information from, and how early?
Well, actually, I probably couldn't give you the exact dates right now. They did Mother Courage in the early 60s.
Yeah.
I can't remember when the first one that they did and when it was. I've got so many dates in my head, so that's why.
Yeah.
But they did, there's a really interesting one, Waiting for Lefty, which we've got a bit of. Do you know that piece?
I know of it, yes.
Yeah, it's interesting. They perform they performed in loads of different spaces.
Yeah.
And I had this incredible conversation with somebody who now lives in France, who was part of the Merseyside Left Theatre, which became Merseyside Unity Theatre. And he was telling me about performing in Kirkland's, which was sort of run by a gangland drug dealer.
Yeah.
Real guns in the production. It was just like incredible. And he was talking about first coming into this building, which used to be a synagogue as well. So you've got all that kind of history. And it's just really incredible to me that these people, they worked and worked and worked and did all these productions and left this incredible archive and legacy. And then that has carried on, in a different way, but into a building and right through to today.
Yeah. The productions themselves are fairly ephemeral, though, aren't they? They sort of sprung up and disappeared. So what you're finding is probably the only record left. There are no published scripts of most of them, are there?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they had some writers that just wrote a huge amount for them, and some of the plays are like, hard to, read because there's so much information, to make a point. But yeah, they're now part of the archive, and you can't, like you say, you can't find them anywhere else, which is quite incredible. Yeah.
The Unity Theatre was actually a movement, though, wasn't it? I think you're the only one left from it. But what was the movement all about? When did it disappear?
Well, it was a national movement, yeah. And then there was we are the only ones left, and there's a Unity Theatre in London.
Yeah.
So the Merseyside Left Theatre joined the Unity Theatre in the 40s, and that was about politics, about socialism, about working voices uniting and putting on plays. So they did take plays from Liverpool to other Unity Theatre organisations.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So there were some that went out and about or shared information. But it's quite amazing that there is a Unity Theatre.
Yeah.
That still exists with the same name.
Yeah. And the movement was a left-wing political movement, really, wasn't it? Theatrical movement. And exactly. Left-wing theatre, it seems to be been quite a big thing sort of from the 30s and up to maybe the 70s, and it seems to have diminished a bit since then. Have you found that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big question. It's kind of like been talked about quite a lot, like what is radical now,
Yeah.
And what is very deliberately like called left wing or not, and also I think it changes when you become an institution.
Yes. Yeah.
It's groups which are quite different, groups and movements.
It's harder to just spring up with something on the street, I suppose, once you're an established organisation, is it?
I think, and there's all the politics around funding, isn't there? And what you can say and what you can't say. I think what remains and hopefully will keep going is actually that you offer a platform for people's voices, and that we shouldn't shy away from work that has a statement, a political message. But it's an interesting climate in that respect. The sort of outrage and cancel culture, and what you can say and what you can't say, and there's something about that I just kind of find quite freeing about a group that has a very clear goals, very clear. I mean, a clear originally affiliation with the Labour Party,
Yeah.
And politics has changed, and
Yes.
So I don't know. I think maybe all theatre should be left wing, but there's commercial theatre is a whole other area, isn't it? And that's that it's bad or it's good, but sometimes I think, just doing something different, offering the space for artists, is that still radical? I don't know.
Yeah.
we in this project, what was interesting is we have like a group of young radical theatre makers because I felt it was important that we're looking at the history, but we should be always looking at the future, and how they're influenced by, some of the stuff that the archives and what they're reading, and what do they want to say and how do they want to say it?
Yeah, because what's important to them will be different to what's been important to people throughout the Unity's history, won't it?
Yeah, and it was really interesting, like reading the aims. It's like how far or close are we to the original aims of the group?
Yeah,
we started that session with the young radicals. Like this was what they decided to do in the 30s. Like what does this feel like to you? What's nice is they have hope, which
yeah, that's nice. Yes,
because it's hard actually. It's been hard reading all this stuff. That's I guess because you think of cycles of economic deprivation and war, ongoing, and so it's like, okay, what has changed and what is different.
Yeah. I was thinking when you were saying about the way the change in funding has affected it was probably around about the 80s during the Thatcher government, because that's when theatre and education was hit by funding changes, because it was criticised by the government for being a bit too political, wasn't it? So it sort of comes hand in hand with that, I suppose, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I suppose what kind of work was being made and what needed to be said, it changes through the time, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And then also, I guess, when you sort of have to make something work as a business, and that's kind of different as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, it's really, really fascinating. And I think like I've been influenced loads, and there's some pieces I think, oh, this is such a great piece, that I want to do this play now. It's in its entirety. Yeah, it's all just completely fascinating. So
yeah, so there are some of the plays from the early days that still would stand up as theatre today, are there?
Yeah, I think so. I think, like I say, like this, like thematically, you could think you could not know what decade it's from in a way, or some of them in terms of what they're speaking about. And I think, yeah, there's some really great texts that haven't been performed much at all.
Yeah.
And then there's some, like I say, that you just like, you could have written this in 10 pages, and it's like,
yeah.
And they did a lot of kind of sketches and review stuff. And there's a great one actually that we're looking at in the piece that I'm making, which is they wrote, but it's taken from the ragged trousered philanthropist.
Yeah.
Called The Great Money Trick, which is a really kind of nice and fun way of basically explaining capitalism.
Yeah.
And yeah, just think like, in terms of like, I suppose what's interesting is like speaking to people, speaking to the workers, to, being part of like, that kind of energy and trade unions and that togetherness, that feels like, where is that? Because you're in a building, you're in a theatre, and it's a different, like this culturally elite thing. And, you're always, we are like, you're always trying to reach people and trying to involve communities and get people to be able to see theatre. But that's a constant challenge.
Yeah. And the other thing about the political theatre, certainly from the 1930s and onwards, it was a working class movement, wasn't it? And there have been plenty of areas of society that are being given voices now who've been silenced in the past, like because of their race or gender or sexuality. But working classes, some people have said that they're being squeezed out of theatre these days. So have you found that?
I mean, I'm glad it's being talked about now.
Yeah.
Because I think it's we've got a panel event about this actually, which will be really interesting because it was working class voices, and I didn't sort of realize until later in life, like, oh, if I'd come from an affluent background, my career path would have been completely different.
Yeah.
You just didn't, you're just like, oh, right.
Yeah.
And the cost of, being able to become a performer or an actor or creative, or, to follow that path, that's a massive element because, whose voices are who's writing the plays, who's being able to work in the theatre.
Yeah.
And even to the point of like, theatres working with local actors, that's a big, that's really important to me.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad to be able to do that with this piece. And somebody in the piece, actually an actress, Stephanie Greer, is sort of set up this equity class network, which is really brilliant and sort of raising that point even more.
Yeah. As Julie Hesmondhalgh, the actress from near to me in Manchester, she wrote in her book about how when she was coming up as an actor, she could go on the dole for a bit, claim benefits for a while between jobs while she was building up a career, and writers could do the same or claim from the Arts Council. And that's a lot harder now, isn't it? Particularly with student fees as well, putting people off the training.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I remember that as well when I started.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's very different. And I remember even when I've taught in drama schools, and I just thought, where are the people, where are the working class voices? Where are the people from this city? And that got better and better, as well as, diversity is just,
Yeah.
I mean, it feels fairly recent that we've even started talking about these things.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think it's so important. And I think it's so important that there are schemes and opportunities that make room for these voices.
But Liverpool is known as being a politically radical city, like Manchester, going back to the Civil War at least. So, yeah, I mean, you've got the basis there for something. They're also, Manchester and Liverpool, we're both very theatrical cities. We've got a long theatrical background. So how are you bringing them together to make opportunities for people now with the Unity?
In terms of Manchester and Liverpool, or?
Well, in terms of, the Unity specifically, but Liverpool.
I was going to say, actually, there should be more links between Manchester and Liverpool.
Well, yes.
It seems so far away. And
there's only the M62 between us.
I know, yeah. Yeah, so it's a big passion of mine. It always has through like my other work that I've been doing in terms of like that it's supporting and developing artists. So we are doing as many different initiatives where there's free training to develop work. So Young Radicals is a part of that. Also, hopefully that ecology around the Unity then being able to offer work itself for performance. So routes in that maybe aren't traditional. We have like a Up Next festival, which has for the past 2 years, so artists have been able to be involved and not just put on work and then it goes away. It's actually supported, which I think is the most important thing. It's like that because it's so hard to know. How would you know what to do? You know, like sometimes, like this is just an example, which was really a beautiful example. Was this guy just came to see me, and he was like a working class lad from Liverpool. He just writes, you know. I feel like he's just in his room writing, and he doesn't know. He's like, I write these plays. I don't know what I would do with them. And I was, you know, I haven't got any actors. I don't know anyone who could just, you know, put something on at a scratch night or whatever. So I was like, why don't you do a reading in our Up Next festival last year? I'll get some people to read it. And it's a great play and called Absurdist Play set on a boat. And I thought, this is great. This would be great for Unity to do. And I like it because it's really it could be really physical as well. And it's got clear underlying political messages, but also very entertaining. And then we supported him and we helped him write his funding application. And I don't think we got much chance, but then he got this money. And then we were doing R&D last week and I just was like, what? He was just like blown away. I was like, did you ever expect that, you know, this would be the case? But the reason that happened is because it's about giving time to people to have those conversations.
Yeah.
And support, and like, you know, you can't do everything single-handedly, but you can go, well, maybe you could speak to this person, or how about you do something on this night and where you can take your work after this, or how you can get funding, or, you know, connecting people.
Yeah.
It's otherwise you're just kind of lost in this world of banging on doors. And I think like that's I've done it for 20 years with a company. Like it's really hard. And so I'm completely from the other side of it, so I completely understand it.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, we're a really small team and a small theatre, and there's something about that I think is a little bit easier as well for people.
Yeah.
And it's also easier for us to take risks with work as well. So yeah, I think that's something I'd really like to develop, and then to be able to get money for people to, you know, have a proper periods of development for their work here.
Yeah.
Would be great.
Yeah. Just reminded me of like Joan Littlewood getting this script from a schoolgirl that turned out to be A Taste of Honey, and Sheila Delaney.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that was how that came out, but you've got to be open to that, and you've got to spend the time on developing it as well. I think Joan Littlewood probably did a lot towards the writing of that play as well, to the final version that we know now. But it does take a lot of work and possibly money as well, doesn't it, to work, to create new work.
It totally does. And I think, like, you know, we don't really have money at the moment.
Yeah.
So you do what you can, but I think, yeah, you're totally right. It's also like, and also if you see someone, you know, like where you think they've really got something, it's like, how can you support that?
Yeah.
And help that happen? Even if you haven't got the money, there are other ways, you know. Yeah, otherwise, you know, like people, and also people not being able to sustain a career in the arts is incredibly hard.
Yes, yeah.
So I think like even people knowing like what else they could do to do that. So like I've run a course it was particularly for women, but with my company that was all about that. It's like, okay, you want to do this thing, but how can you get work and look, most of the people are from low socioeconomic backgrounds, how can you make a wider career in the arts and make it work? And because there isn't a path or a blueprint for any of this stuff, like there is in many careers.
Yes, like if you're working in a bank or something, there's an obvious route through in there.
Exactly, yeah. Which may have been a better career path, but not as interesting.
Well, no. You mentioned Graeme before, Graeme Phillips, who was there for over 30 years. It's quite some big shoes to fill when you stepped in after him. What was it he established there and that you took over, and what have you changed since then?
Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly big shoes to fill. I mean, he was incredible, really, and it's interesting because conversations I had with him, I'd ask him like, what did you do that was radical, and what did you do that was, and he's like, I didn't do anything, and it's like, what do you mean? You basically established Homotopia, the gay arts festival in Liverpool.
Yeah.
For me, like, and for the city, I think, it was really creating this space, which he did, which I'm really passionate about. What he did so amazingly was a space that brought in really interesting quality work, touring work to the city, as well as being an open door for local people to put on work.
Right.
And lots of people say that when they talk about Graeme, it was that sort of open door, which he was for me when I wanted to make work, so supportive and critical, which is important.
Yes.
And, like it being somebody wants to put on a play and they're like, loads of people have said that. And Graeme's gone, all right, that will make this happen, But it's that mixture of both. So, I think about the stuff I saw when I was a student here, and it blew me away. And it sort of changed what kind of theatre I wanted to make and work in. When I saw, the early Told by an Idiot shows and Volcano and Frantic and The Kosh and The Right Size, like all these incredible companies, even Complicite, early Complicite. I'm like, this is exciting. He brought brilliant work to the city and also helped and supported loads of different initiatives for different festivals and companies and arts organisations. And, of course, there was Hope Street Limited, which also supported physical theatre work. So there's that kind of synergy. They had their own Christmas show for many years, which we're trying to bring back. So, yeah, I think like what I'm trying to, I've learned a lot from Graeme, and I think what he established here was incredible.
Yeah.
And what he managed to continue to do, over all these years with the ups and downs. And then there's a gap after Graeme left, and the two other people, I guess in quite a short space of time have been here. And when I came in to the job, I wasn't sure what was going to happen with the place, and it's definitely a passion project. Put it that way.
Yeah.
There'd be easier things to do.
Yeah. Easier ways of earning money.
Yeah. But I think, that what's really important is those connections with people. So for me, it was like, we've got to get people back in the door. We've got to reestablish those connections with so many different levels, with communities, with groups, with companies, artists, schools. So you can have that real sort of mixture of a space that people feel, there's a lot of love for the Unity in Liverpool and a lot of actual sense of ownership and what it should be doing,
Yeah.
From people back from obviously before it was a building. And there was a big sort of legacy of work and people feel very strongly, I think, that it remains a space that also brings in brilliant work, but it is accessible and open. I think that's really important. We've got some brilliant groups here who are residents, like that. I think that kind of mix with different diversities, different groups. We've got a learning disabled group here, theatre group every Monday night who are it's their home. It's amazing. We've got like a youth theatre here. We've got a community group, Women in Action, who is lots of different people from the community coming every Tuesday who are also working on the heritage piece.
And taking over from Graeme, I suppose that's quite a daunting thing, but it's a place that a venue and a company that you used to, that you know very well. So was it a smooth transition into your own style?
Yeah. I mean, it did feel like home to me already.
Yeah.
Which is really good. And people have been, and still are, so incredibly supportive, of me being here, which I've been in the city for so long and I have lots of relationships with almost everyone.
Yeah.
And new people coming through the doors, which is fantastic. Yeah. And the support, is I think that just makes it so much easier, because it's a really difficult climate.
Yeah.
To be running a building, and running a building I haven't done before.
Right.
You just think, oh my God. Oh, everything's okay. Oh no, it's not. The lift's broken. Everything's, where are we going to get all this money from? You're kind of like, oh my God. And I think, Graeme used to make a lot of work. He used to direct a lot of work. And obviously I make work. And I think it's really great that through this heritage production, we can make work. So we can not only make work, but we can give people work.
Yeah.
And there's lots of different aspects, and workshops and community involvement. And also, we made a Christmas show last year. And again, it's a lot. It's kind of feels like we are back in the 80s, like beg, steal and borrow.
Yeah.
Around charity shops, for the set and stuff. But there's a real spirit, I think, and I'm very used to it, and the community of people I work with, of let's make this happen, And there's a lot of incredibly talented people around who are very supportive, which is brilliant. And
Yeah.
I think it's just great to be both a receiving house and somewhere that makes work or supports other people to make work, or in partnership, or so it has that kind of alive sense of creating as well.
It keeps you fresh, I suppose, when you've got new work that you haven't created coming in at the same time as you're creating work. You get to see what else is going on, don't you?
Exactly. And that's, it's so important. And I think, like that sort of cycle of influence, I suppose, isn't it? It's really important. You see what's being made, what other people are talking about. And for the young artists as well, it definitely, for me, that's what it is, isn't it? You just see as much as you can and get as much inspiration and, up your game, I suppose. Or you go, oh, bloody hell, look at that.
So who are the current companies who might be the next Right Size or Complicité?
There's a huge amount of talented people making work at the moment. There's a lot of writers. That seems to be a big change. I don't know if it's a huge amount of people are writing themselves, and writing pieces and developing work. And there's been some fantastic pieces that have been started here and created here. And I think, some talents. There was an incredible young woman who performed in this piece called Stella that started as a scratch night. And it was actually written by someone who's been around for a long time, Bob Farquhar, but it was written especially for her. And it was just when you think, okay, there's another Jodie Comer.
Yes.
Maybe she'll be our patron in 50 times. Yeah, there's a lot of really, really exciting work coming out at the moment. And I think because the funding climate is much more competitive and more difficult, it's really useful that people can be quite self-sufficient. I think even for that feeling of being an artist and being able to make and create, not always for free, but actually this is what you do, isn't it? So
yeah,
you want to do it and you need to do it. So how can that be facilitated and supported?
Yeah. And so you've got quite a diverse program of work, but what about your audiences? Who are your audiences? Are they... The problem with political theatre sometimes is that it can be an echo chamber. It can be preaching to the converted. So are you getting, we're speaking here on the eve of some local elections, which are probably going to be quite divisive in many areas, including mine. What's political theatre doing in the Unity? What audiences is it bringing in?
Well, I think it's a good question. Will we reach anyone on the far side, shall we say.
It's a nice way of putting it, yes.
I mean, I don't know. I think it's very difficult. Like you mostly are preaching to the converted, but saying that, I think then it's probably about younger people coming through, like who's seeing work, like we're building up good relationships with schools, so they come and see something and, it affects their mind. And, I kind of think like we do what we can, and that's to do is reaching out and working with different communities, getting them involved and then trying to get them to come and see work. But in reality, I would say, I think those are the people who you can kind of maybe make a difference with.
Yes.
I'm trying not to say certain things.
You have to speak through your theatre sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of playing it safe, isn't there?
Yeah.
It's, there's been lots of controversy, hasn't there? Shows being pulled and all that kind of thing. It's a difficult climate, and probably, like I say, it's obviously more difficult for bigger venues that may have an audience that might be appalled at certain things, or I don't know. And I think like who is in our audience in general is very mixed, actually, because there's such a mix of work. But I think that's good. I think like there's a real sort of generational mix, and sort of building back and trying to understand, the audiences. And I would love, to get more of the conservative audience members here,
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with it. You should, have a good night out, but also like, what is it? What you're seeing? What's the point of it being on the stage is what I always think.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the point?
Yeah.
To see some things, I just think I don't understand that point of it being live, which is more and more of a rarity, isn't it? And it just gets you in a way that something can't, like there's this a really beautiful thing recently there's a really good piece by Grey-Eye. Do you know Grey-Eye?
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of it, but it's about this Bermondsey boys home.
Right, yeah.
Which was an awful place in the northeast, and they were kind of like it was just an incredible piece, also with this BSL performer integrated into it, and it was so well written and so skillfully performed. And we had a group from a boys' school in North Liverpool who came, and some of them hadn't been to the theatre before, and were just like completely blown away. And the teacher said like that literally the next day their work changed.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's like, sounds very, it sounds cheesy, doesn't it? But that's massive, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes theatre can change the world in a small way, can't it?
Yeah, yeah. And that's the kind of thing that makes me think, we need to keep going,
Yeah, yeah.
Like, with the sort of massive stuff you can watch. And that's like so dangerous, isn't it? As we already know from many stories, is, the gathering of online, support for things and what people can see and how they can get influenced is just like, there's also the human element that gets taken away from stuff, isn't there?
Yeah, yeah.
Which I guess, you have to become a little bit, numb to things. Otherwise you'd go mad, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
You hear all this stuff and then you just see like that. There's another beautiful piece called Grain of Sand by a Palestinian writer. And it was so beautiful and moving. It's a person's story. You can see, you see news reports every day, don't you? And you become kind of immune to it.
Yeah, yeah. But once it's personalised, it becomes, particularly when it's somebody that you sort of get to like through a story, it makes it more meaningful, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's just, there are people, there are human beings, underneath all this craziness.
Yeah. So you've got several events coming up. What's coming up soon that we can see? You've got exhibitions and performances. What's coming up soon?
Yeah, so the performance that I'm working on that I've called Stage Left is on from the 4th to the 6th of June at the Unity. And before that, you can see the Young Radicals performance. That'll be upstairs. We'll be downstairs.
Right.
The exhibition, which is at the university, which is really great because you get to see some of the archive, And they also have our archive open day. So that opens on the 14th of May and that runs right through till the end of June. And we've got other events. We've got on the 30th, we've got Breaking the Glass Ceiling, which is a panel event about working class art and artists, followed by Radical Scratch. So lots of people performing their radical pieces.
Right.
And that's the kind of heritage program as well as workshops. So you can come and join in political song if you want. Yeah, we're working on the piece with a brilliant artist, composer Patrick Janine, who's got a long relationship with the Unity as well.
Yeah.
And he's obsessed with Brecht songs and that kind of style. So he's going to be working on the production, and he's also running a workshop as well. So that's really exciting.
Right. And then what's next for the Unity after this? Where's it going next?
Oh my God. Where's it going? Well, I'm planning the autumn season. Obviously, you're always just keeping on planning.
Yeah.
And yeah, we've got like lots of exciting stuff, touring stuff coming up, hopefully, and lots of local festivals, which there's so many of them now in that autumn season in Liverpool, which is fantastic, bringing some really interesting work to the Unity. Hopefully we'll be able to make another Christmas show. I literally no idea where I'm going to find the money, but I'll start the search. Yeah, and we've got some people that are kind of developing work into full length that was in the Up Next Festival, which is some really exciting artists. And some people we've also supported, help with funding that, fingers crossed they can take that work further as well.
That was Eli Randle, Artistic Director of the Unity Theatre in Liverpool. The various events in A Radical Reimagining will take place through May and June 2026, including Young Radical Theatre Makers and Stage Left, both from the 4th to the 6th of June. For more information, see www.unitytheatreliverpool.co.uk.
You've been listening to a podcast from British Theatre Guide. For more information, please visit britishtheatreguide.info.